And we're live on the Mighty Blaze. Welcome, book lovers. Welcome to Authors Love Bookstores. My name is Kimberly Hensle Lowrance, and I'm your host today. Here on Authors Love Bookstores, we bring to you a conversation with an author and his or her favorite independent bookstore to shine a light on storytelling and creativity, essential parts of our culture and our collective human experience. We talk about the books written by our guest author, and we'll also discuss what makes the indie bookstore we're featuring so special. We hope you'll be inspired to read our guest writing, buy a book from the bookstore we're featuring, and even visit the bookstore in person. I host and produce this show in conjunction with fellow writer Joe Moldover, and we're so glad that you're here. If you're watching live with us on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to post a question via a comment below the broadcast, and we'll get to as many as we can later on. Today, we are lucky to welcome that elusive species, the author who is also a bookseller, or is it a bookseller who is also an author? It's a bit of a chicken or an egg situation here on A Mighty Blaze today. Welcome, Alex George.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kimberly.
Is it a chicken? Is it an egg? Which came first?
Oh, well, the writing definitely came first. I mean, I've published 7 novels, but I've only owned the bookstore for coming up for 3 years. So definitely the author bit came first.
Okay, so let me tell you, our audience, a little bit about Alex and his wonderful book, The Paris Hours, which is now out in paperback. So Alex is a writer, a bookseller, a director of a literary festival, and a lawyer. If you are not tired by the end of this bio, I don't know what you've been doing, because I'm exhausted. Like writing this bio, I was exhausted. So Alex, as he's mentioned, has written 7 novels. His novel, A Good American, was published in 2012. It was a #1 Indie Next pick, a Barnes & Noble Discover New Writers pick, an Amazon Best of Book of the Month pick, Midwest Connections pick, and a Library Journal Best Book of the Year. It was a national and international bestseller. His next book was Setting Free the Kites. It came out in 2017, also an Indie Next pick, also a Barnes & Noble Best Fiction pick, also we go on and on. Library Reader's Choice and a Midwest Connection pick. It also won the Missouri Prize for Fiction in 2018. His latest novel is The Paris Hours. It is an Indie Next pick and a Book of the Month selection. It also was an Amazon Best Book of the Month, which is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. And it was an instant national bestseller. I just finished it this morning. It's such a good book. I'm so excited we get to talk about it. Alex's writing has appeared in other mediums, including the Washington Post and Literary Hub. And in addition to the writing, as I mentioned, he owns an independent bookstore, Skylark Bookshop in Columbia, Missouri, where he is broadcasting from today. We're going to take a sneak peek at it later on.
Really glamorous back there.
And you're a practicing attorney, and you have a family. So
yes,
theoretically, you also care for other people, and a dog.
And a dog.
And a dog. That's a lot.
It is a lot. And the dog is this is sort of, I don't know if you can see him over there, but that's the looking as enthused as he normally looks when he's sort of doing these things. So.
Well, we're thrilled that you're with us today. Congratulations on all of this success for your novels, including this new book. The Publishers Weekly describes The Paris Hours as elegant, evocative, and engrossing. I loved that description. I thought it was very, very accurate. The book is extremely elegant and engrossing. Can you tell our audience about your book for those who have not yet read it?
Sure. I mean, so it's a novel, but it's really 4 different stories, and it's set in Paris, as you can probably have guessed by the title, and it takes place over the course of one day in 1927. And as I say, there are 4 different stories within it. There are 4, and so it's really four different stories which all sort of come together at the end. And the 4 characters, there's a love-struck poet called Guillaume. Mm-hmm. There is an Armenian puppeteer called Soren who performs puppet shows in the parks of Paris in Armenian rather than in French. There is a writer called Jean-Paul who's a journalist, and he tells other people's stories because his own story is sort of too sad for him to tell. And then finally, there is Camille, who is the maid of Marcel Proust. And the story really began with her because I was reading about Proust, and I was actually reading the memoir of Celeste Alberet, who was Proust's actual real-life maid. And she tells us this story about one day when Proust asked her to burn these 32 notebooks that he had that contained really the whole heart and the essence of In Search of Lost Time. And, I'm somebody who, if I write half a sentence, I'm pressing Control Save because I'm terrified of losing anything. And so the idea of burning all of these books has sent me into conniptions. But I thought, I always say that sort of novelists are like magpies. We're always on the lookout for shiny things to put in our stories. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting idea. And then my sort of novelist brain starts going and it starts asking these what if questions. And the first question was, well, what if she didn't burn all of the books? And then the next question was, and what if there was a secret in the book that wasn't burned that affects everybody? And really the whole story sort of began from that. So yeah, it's a period piece, very much so. But and then at the end, as I say, all of these four stories sort of converge in a jazz club in Montmartre.
The book features so many real people.
Mm-hmm.
Gertrude Stein, Sylvia Beach, Josephine Baker, Ernest Hemingway, just to name a few. As a writer, how did you approach incorporating real people in a fictional story? What kind of research did you do? And what kind of advice would you have for writers considering doing the same thing in their work?
Well, so that's a great question. I always take the view when it comes to incorporating real people. I always adopt what I sort of call a defensive crouch, in that what I don't want to do is to get anything wrong. So I do a lot of research, of course, and I sort of have a rule that you sort of read at least 2 big thick books about anybody who you feature. So I actually have read more books about Proust than I have actually read Proust, but that's another story. So I always so my view is that you need to be able to. The one of the metaphors I sometimes use is like, a novel is it's a single thread that you lay over a tapestry that already exists, and the thread has to match the background.
Right.
So you have to be true to the historical facts as they are. And so that means that, you can't have somebody appearing in your book if they weren't actually in Paris at the time, for example. And there's and as novelists, I think we always sort of operate in the shadows and in the lacunae where we don't quite know what goes on. And a wonderful example of that is a wonderful book by Chris Castellani called Leading Men. And he takes this lost summer that Tennessee Williams had. No one quite knows what he did. And he concocts this beautiful story in this hole where no one really knows what's going on. And so I sort of adopted that approach. I did my best to sort of read as much as I could, to sort of ingest as much as I could of these characters. And then I sort of did a sort of osmosis. Hopefully it came in and then it all just came out again. And so, for example, there's a scene in the middle of the book where Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein are in Sylvia Beach's bookshop, Shakespeare and Company. And when I first wrote the scene, they were sort of quite chatty and affable with each other. But I realized actually that by 1927, which is when the book is set, they actually weren't getting on especially well. There was like the two monstrous egos finally sort of clashed with each other. And so there was a lot of bickering. And so I actually rewrote the scene to get closer to what I felt was sort of going on at the time. Now, obviously, were those words spoken? Absolutely not. I made them up. But it's the kind of thing that could have happened. So, as I say, when thinking about historical fiction and real people, as sort of we sort of novelists sort of lurk in the shadows of possibility and what might have happened.
I love that idea. Lurk in the shadows. Sounds so sinister. It also sounds like you're in a position to pay attention, right? Versus someone who's in the middle of it in the sunlight, maybe isn't getting all the details. So one of the other things that's really an important character in this novel is Paris itself.
Yeah.
And Paris in the 1920s, I mean, it just sounds glamorous and romantic. Everybody who was someone culturally was there at that time. I think we've all kind of, I mean, especially now as we're in the 2021, we're probably thinking back to that time even more. What was it like for you to begin a book, or set a book in Paris? You've had a long connection with the city. You went to school there. You were an attorney there. Had that always been a dream of yours to set a book in Paris? Was it intimidating to send a book in Paris?
It was something that I had always wanted to do. I didn't find it especially intimidating. I mean, it was wonderful fun. It was just, I would sort of had a wonderful time sort of reading a ton of stuff about Paris and going online and looking at old videos and all this. And it was funny because I would occasionally write, I get up early in the morning. That's when I write. And I remember once writing at sort of 5 o'clock. I go, right, I'm off to Paris. I was going to go and write my book, and then I switched off the internet. Came back 2 hours later, and everyone had gone, "Oh, you lucky thing! Oh, you have a nice time." And I was going, "Oh no, I'm just not actually going. I'm just in my imagination." So it was a fun thing to do. I mean, it's a challenge. Writing about Paris is never easy because there's a balance to be struck, because everybody thinks that they know what Paris is like. The Eiffel Tower is probably the most famous building in the world, certainly the most easily recognizable, and people have ideas about croissant and sitting in cafes and drinking coffee and what have you, all of which is good and true, but you also want to show the reader something else.
Yes.
And sort of a different sort of register. And so there's always a balance between showing people what they know so that they can recognize it, but also showing them something new. And so one of the things that I did was to set the book not in by the Eiffel Tower, the Champs-Elysees, or anywhere like that, but in the sort of the back streets a little bit, and so where real Parisians actually live and shop and work. And that was kind of fun to do that. And I think that I've lived there, and if I add it all up, for a year and a half or something, and that helped, because I was able to use that knowledge. And then Google Maps, or the street finder thing, is a wonderful thing, because I have these. One of the fun things was like basically sending my characters walking all over town, because Paris is a wonderful city to walk in. But I would also sort of go with them, and I would sort of, once I could work out how to make the arrow thing work properly, and I would sort of go down the street and turn left, and look, and so that was kind of fun.
What did writers do before Google Maps?
I have no idea.
Libraries. It must have been
even more books.
Even more books. I think it's calling the reference desk at the library, isn't it? And like asking them to describe it to you.
But I did have the Paris Google Map thing permanently up on my computer, and I would just look at it and just work out where people are. And actually, Flatiron did a brilliant thing for the paperback release. They actually did a map with all of the different places that appear in the book on the map, which was pretty great. So that was nice.
Your characters aren't exclusively in Paris, though. So they're the backstory for the puppeteer takes us from, he escapes the Armenian genocide and comes to France. The journalist Jean-Paul, he fights for France in World War I. So they are in other places, and there is this element in the story of grief that they all carry, like they've all lost something, or are in the process of losing something as the story unfolds. And it feels like that loss connects them all, which is like an interesting contrast to that they're all taking place in a city that we think of as having so much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned Proust before, and he is a character in the book, and the usual translation of his masterwork is In Search of Lost Time. And I sometimes think, without trying to compare myself to him, but that would be a good subtitle for this book, because you're right, all four of these characters have lost, and what they've lost, they're all looking backwards to the past and to something that they have lost in the past, and that is really what unites them as a quartet until the end. And that's just a theme that just really resonated with me. And the past is a door. We can't go back through it. So, and everybody has to deal with that in various different ways. And so that's the struggle that they all face. So
in addition to writing these wonderful books, you also have a bookstore. where you are today. And I should mention to our audience that Alex is going to give away a Skylark Bookshop T-shirt to one of our viewers. To be eligible, you have to comment, say something wonderful about the show, about Alex. Tell us you're there, ask us a question. So post a comment or a question, and you can be entered into the giveaway. Okay, so Skylark Bookshop is in Missouri.
Yes.
Columbia, Missouri. It's 3 years old, right? What made you want to start a bookstore? By the time you started this book, you were already an attorney. You already had this book festival. You already were a published author. What made you think a bookstore was next?
Yeah, I wasn't busy enough, Kimberly.
I think that's what it is.
That's all clearly. I can tell you. I was bored, so I did.
You were sleeping, and you thought, "Oh, I have to end that right now."
No, so what it was it was really to do with the Unbound Book Festival that we began, and of course the phone's going to go. Sorry about that. In 2016. And that is a festival that it's a completely free festival. We started it, then we've had our keynotes so far have been Michael Ondaatje, Salman Rushdie, Zadie Smith, and George Saunders. And then last year we had Jericho Brown and Tracy K. Smith, which was just all amazing. And we would do this every year, and back when the last time we did it in person was in 2019, and we had about, I think, 77 authors who came from across the country, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a lot of work though, but one of the things that we noticed was that people would say, because Barnes and Noble, and I'm very good friends with the folks at Barnes and Noble in Columbia, they sold the books for us. And for the first few years, and everyone will come up to me and say, this is great, but it would be really nice if an independent bookstore would be doing this. And that just sort of started me thinking. And then just the enthusiasm that the community has embraced the festival with made me think, well, there's a real hunger and a real passion for books here, as there should be. I mean, there are 3 universities in this town, a lot of writers, a lot of readers, an insane number of book clubs. So there's a lot of people love their books in Columbia, Missouri. And so, and there wasn't at the time an independent bookstore, extraordinarily, that sells new books. And so I thought, well, there's a gap. And this was round about the time when a lot of people were talking about the renaissance of independent bookstores. And I remember actually listening to a particular podcast, and I was actually driving somewhere wearing my lawyer hat and listening to this podcast. And Josh Christie was on it. Josh owns print books in Portland, in Maine, talking about this renaissance. And I thought, you know what? I'm not getting any younger. Why don't we do it? Yeah. And so I reached out to Kerry Kupke, who's the manager here and who's my partner and who actually knows what she's doing in a way that I don't. And I talked to her about it, and we thought, well, why not? And so we started, and we opened in August of 2018. And here we are, and it is so much fun. It is really, really wonderful, and every time I come in here, my heart just lifts. And it's a lot more fun than drafting wills and trusts. I can
imagine. I want to just add a point, which is we had Print a Bookstore on the show last year in conversation with Lily King.
Oh, sure.
And then, we also had Christopher Castellani on last year. You mentioned him earlier, and he was on with Rakestraw Books. So for those people watching who want to check out those interviews, they're on our playlist on the Facebook page of A Mighty Blaze. I love that you describe having the bookstore as fun, because one of the things we have learned from doing almost 60 shows is that it is a tremendous amount of work to run a bookstore. People think it's like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and read a book all day and put my feet up and drink some coffee at the Great Cafe. But it is so much more than that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, you have to love the books, first of all. And this past year has been extraordinarily difficult for bookstores. How has Skylark weathered the storm of the pandemic?
Well, I mean, we've been incredibly lucky. We have had amazing support from our community. I do think that we were lucky with the even insofar as you can ever be lucky with the timing of a pandemic. We were, because we had been open at that point for about a year and a half. So we'd had 2 Christmas seasons, so that helped. But we had been around just long enough for people to work out that what we were doing was something that they were fans of. And so when we shut down, I mean, we literally, the phone never stopped ringing, and people were ordering books and doing all of the things, and we got phone calls and emails from all across the country, people with no connection to us at all, who were just going, heard about you, I've just sent me a book, I just want to do something to support independent bookstores. So there were these angels, across the country, who were just getting in touch and buying books from us. And so thanks to that, we were able to keep going, and we were closed for several months. And our shop floor, which I hope I'll sort of show you in a while, just turned into basically a packaging warehouse. And we did a 180 in terms of our business model, and from sending out a couple of books a week, our mailman stopped showing up on foot pretty quickly, and he would come around at the end of the day with his van and just load everything in.
Okay.
And so that was one thing that happened. The other thing that happened, and obviously everyone's always in the market for silver linings when it comes to the pandemic. We didn't have an e-commerce website, and we very deliberately didn't do that, because we wanted people to come in. We wanted them to have that independent bookstore experience, or at least to call us or send us an email. But we realized that that was not a sustainable thing, and we needed to give people as much opportunity as they could to shop with us in different ways. And so we began that, and that's been very successful. And of course, that is something that, now that we have it, we're not going to sort of stop doing that. So it's been great. We've learned a lot. I mean, independent booksellers, as you know, are creative and innovative people, and we'll always find ways of getting books into people's hands. And I think it's been so interesting to watch what everyone is doing in terms of how they use social media, and how they do this and how they do that. And it's been, and the industry is such that they're so supportive, and everyone is so supportive of each other, that's been interesting as well, to sort of watch people share these ideas and say, well, we did this and it worked really well. So it's been good.
So for our viewers, we're putting links to Skylark in the comments, so you can buy books there, including Alex's book. It's a perfect gift for
which I will sign and personalize.
Oh, that's right. You can get a signed copy if you buy it from Skylark. Perfect. It's a great book for you to buy for yourself, or for a friend, or Father's Day coming up on Sunday. Perfect gift. So one of the things we love about independent bookstores is how each bookstore is unique. It has their own flavor, their own sort of way of doing things. And that trickles down to hand selling books. You walk in and you say, customer will ask for a recommendation, and what they get will be largely driven by the bookseller and sort of their perspective and what they're reading. And I'm so curious, as a writer, as a published author, as a best-selling author, how does that influence your interactions with customers when they ask for recommendations? Because you must know so many writers also in your life. How does that, do you find yourself gravitating toward your friends' books? Do you you try really hard? Do you never hand sell your own books because you don't want to be pushy, but you should because it's great?
So that's a conversation that I had. I've done a couple of events recently with other author bookseller people, and I did one with Kelly Link and Ann Patchett, and then another one with Danny Kane at the Raven, and Emma Straub. And we all have different sort of views about selling our own books. And so now, if you're Ann Patchett, that's not really something you need to worry about, because people just they know exactly who she is. But I sort of don't, and I sort of, if anybody ever sort of comes in, I sort of run the opposite direction, because it makes my toes curl a tiny bit to do that. And on a couple of occasions, I've sort of said, someone's picked it up, and I'll say, if you want, I'll sign that for you. And they look at the cover and they see my face on the back of it, and then the most credit, then they put it back down and walk away and go. So when that happens a couple of times, you just think, oh, I'm probably not going to do that anymore. It's they just,
are they intimidated? Is that what it is? They must be intimidated.
I don't know. It's but no, I mean, I would like to think that that I'm not unduly swayed by the fact that some of these folks are my friends. I mean, I probably am, but it's it's, I mean, no matter how, there are always many more books, and and it really just depends what people want. I mean, sometimes there's something that's going to align very precisely with a book that I might have just finished, or someone buys a book, someone I know, but not usually. Normally it's just something, and very often these sorts of recommendations are collaborative anyway, and I may turn around and say, what do you think about this? And so it very much depends, but it is fun to sell your friends' books. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's always and I'll occasionally write afterwards, just hand sold another one.
Oh. The other thing about indie bookstores that it's so wonderful, the events that are put together, this opportunity to talk to the authors you love about the books that they've written.
Right.
Can you tell us about a memorable event that you've hosted at Skylark over the years, something that stands out?
A memorable event. Well, we obviously haven't done any events for the last 18 months or so, and we were really just getting going with the events when this all happened, and then we sort of shut down. And with Unbound is such an enormous thing that sort of the couple of months prior to that, we tend not to do too much anyway. But one fun thing I will tell you about during the pandemic, we did a bunch of stuff. We had once a week, we did one event a week, which was fairly modest by a lot of people's standards, but it was quite enough for us. But we were trying to work out what could we do that was a little bit different. Think about, as you were talking about the uniqueness of every independent store. And so we came up with this idea that we asked our authors to compose a haiku, which we called a skyku. And then they sent them to us, and then we printed them out on little bookmarks, and then we sent them back to them, and they signed them and dated them. So there's strict limited edition.
Smart.
And then people who bought the book would actually get a signed and numbered and dated skyku, and that was kind of fun. And so we've got skyku from Christina Baker Klein, and also Byron Lane, all sorts of fun people. So yeah, that was kind of a fun thing.
Oh, that's so clever.
But we're really looking forward to getting back and having people back in the shop. We have one in-person event planned, and it's right at the end of August. So we're being very cautious about all that.
Okay. What are you like when you visit other bookstores? Do you rearrange the shelves?
Well, apart from taking my book and
putting it right in the center.
Well, I mean, that is something that I used to do.
Okay.
Before I owned a bookstore, and now that I have a bookstore, I would never dream of doing it, because I know what a total pain it is when people do it. So no more of that. No, I mean, but as you were saying, Kimberly, the joy of these things is that every front table is different. And I love to, and the great thing is, of course, these days you can do it online as well, but I love when I go into another bookstore, just see what they've got, see what it is they're passionate about, what they're selling, and you could be sure it's going to be different to what we have on our shelves and on our tables. So that's for me is the really interesting thing. And I'll invariably go, oh, I didn't know that was out yet, or whatever it is. And they're just, because we're fairly, I guess, a medium-sized store, but you can't stock everything. So we all make decisions all the time, so curatorial decisions about what to stock and what not to stock, on what are we going to put on the table, and those discussions are all, they vary from shop to shop, and that's the joy of it.
One of the questions we always get from our audience is, what's popular in your store? So what are customers buying at Skylark? What are they interested in? And what do you see coming down the pike that you're excited about?
Well, I mean, this fall is insane. I mean, we've got Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony
Mm.
Doerr. We've got the new Colson Whitehead, which
Mhm.
is amazing. There's a new Amor Towles book. I mean, it just goes these big books. Oh, and Matrix by Lauren
I
Groff.
know. I can't wait for that one.
So good.
So
So
excited.
it's going to be terrific. And Paula Hawkins has a new book coming, and we're actually doing an event with her. We're in conjunction with a ton of others. One of the fun things about this is that we can with the online stuff is that a lot of independent bookstores are now going in together to make these pitches for things, and that's kind of fun as well. So that too. As for what we're selling right now, what Kerry's over here, I'm just gonna. So this is, I mentioned Kerry before. She's my business partner, and she's looking after the dog. There she is.
Hi, Kerry. Welcome.
Hello.
What are we selling, Kerry?
What are we selling right now? Well, the new McQuiston just came out.
Right.
One
Last stop,
which is doing really well, and people really need those light, happy-ish reads right now. So those are doing well.
Yeah.
Counterbalance the gut punches.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to think what's on our table. I mean, I know Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller is down there, which we sold a ton of. And
Clint Smith.
Oh yes, the Clint Smith book as well is sort of flying off the shelves, and we sell a lot of cookbooks. I mean, I think that I'm keeping feels like I'm keeping Otto Lengi in sort of porcini mushrooms all on my own with the amount that I hand sell all of his cookbooks.
Oh, fascinating. Do you just have established a substantial cookbook collection and people come? Or is it something that's grown over the years?
No, I mean, I've always been a big collector of cookbooks myself and an enthusiastic cook. And so when we started, I just said, right, we've got to have all of these. And when people come up and I just see them, if I see them hovering, I'll come up and sort of jump on them, metaphorically anyway, and say, if you haven't tried Otto Lengi, then you absolutely should, because it's all wonderful. So and one book that I talk about a lot is the Book of Delights by Ross Gay, which is one of every staff member adores it, and it's one of our favorites to hand sell, because it's a glorious book, and it's this little white thing, and the way that we sell it is that we pick it up and we open up to the back cover where there's a picture of Ross with this huge smile on his face, and we just say, look, this is what, like, buy this book. It's like happiness in your hand, and you'll feel like this after you've read it. So
it's a wonderful endorsement. We'll put a link to that book below the broadcast so people watching can just click and go buy it right away if they can't come in person. So I know you want to give us a tour of the store, but I want to ask you a couple more questions before you go out on the floor. So I've joked a little bit in the opening that you have a lot of things that you are juggling professionally. And so I'm just really fascinated, and I'm sure our audience is as well. How do you make it all work? How do you protect your time for writing, run a bookstore? There's just so much on your plate. And I think a lot of writers are successful at finding ways not to write.
Oh, yes. I'm
really curious how you protect that time and how you make it happen.
Well, I mean, in terms of the writing, the way that I have always done it is I just get up really early in the morning, and I get up at 5 and write for a couple of hours. And that's the one time when I can be relatively sure that the email isn't going to go off and the phone isn't going to ring, and it can be undisturbed. But even so, I write on a Mac, and I have this thing called Freedom, which just basically turns everything off, and you can't get back on unless you switch the whole thing off. And I have too much shame to do that, so that works quite well. And then the rest of the days are just one thing that I am always grateful for is that every day is different. Sometimes I'll be in the shop, sometimes I don't come into the shop for a few days, although I'm constantly texting and emailing with Kerry, and sometimes I meet clients, and sometimes I do things here, and when the festival really gets going, then that can overtake things as well. So it's always different, but the key is, as you say, is protecting that time to write, and that's why it's always been at the start of the day, because nothing else is going to get in the way of that.
We're also going to put a link. Thank you for sharing that. And we're also going to put a link to the Unbound Book Festival below. So for those people who want to check it out, this year you were online, right? But
yes,
next year, I imagine you don't know yet.
We were completely online this year, and we had, I think, 33 events, 69 authors, and that is all of those are online on our YouTube channel. It's all free to watch, and if you don't watch anything else, go and see the keynote that we did with Jericho and Tracy, because it's the most extraordinary 90 minutes that I've participated in. It was just wonderful. These two Pulitzer Prize winning poets, just who are good friends and just talking to each other, so smart, so brilliant, just amazing. So we that was all online. Next year we've just secured our keynote. I can't tell you who it is yet, but that is going to be back in person again.
Okay.
And we cannot wait. After two long years without it.
Are you at work on another novel?
In theory, I am. Yes. That's what I'm telling myself and other people. But it's slow work right now.
Yeah, of course. It's a lot on your plate. So you want to show us the store? So we're going to go in a little.
We are doing masks at the minute, so forgive me while where is it? See, we have
Skylark.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So I'm going to turn this around, and I hope you can still hear me okay. So this is the upstairs. Here is the cookbook selection, and here these are, you see, we have all of these shelf talkers, and you can always tell which are mine because you can't read them. And then we have, these are some of my favorite sections: books about writing, books about books, and we have we got 4 bays of poetry, which we're very, very proud of. So that is that. We've got biography and memoir and history, and then I'm really going to try hard and not fall down the stairs when I...
Yeah, let's not do that. What a beautiful store this is, Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, we like it. And then back here is all of our kids stuff, and we love our kids section. And we have this amazing tree that one of our staff made, and it's a tree with sort of made of words.
Oh wow!
And there are little skylarks. I don't know if you can see that, but up on the branches. So yeah, so we love all that, and here we go. There's Carol.
Oh, she didn't say.
And there's Erin. And here are paperback table, hardcover table. So yeah, it's a lot.
What's the ceiling is very high. What was this building originally?
So originally it was a clothing store.
Oh, okay.
And it was funny because when we opened, there were certain ladies of a particular vintage who came in, and their eyes went all misty, and they all talked about how when they were, I guess, graduating from college, this was back in the days when people would, they would walk down those stairs, and in their prom dress, and it was all quite. They all got quite emotional about it, which is quite amusing. So, but it's been various things over the years. It was actually, when I first came to Columbia back in 2003, it was a bookstore, and that was one of the reasons why I sort of thought it would be nice to do that again and to revitalize it in that way.
We've gotten an audience question for you, which is you told us a lot about the books that are popular in the store right now, but we have an audience member who wants to know what you're reading right now. What do you gravitate toward during this time of uncertainty in our country?
I read a ton of different things, obviously, and I'm reading a book at the moment which is coming out, I think, in the fall or maybe a little bit later, which I've been asked to blurb, and that's a Flatiron author by Lucy Jago, which is wonderful. It's a Jacobean historical novel. It's really cool. The book I'm actually reading right now, the novel I'm reading right now is Detransition Baby.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. And I'm really, really enjoying that. But, I have about 7 books going on at the same time to the point where I can't even remember what they all are. But that's the one that's sort of occupying me at the moment.
And then on the Skylark website, can customers order these lovely masks that you're wearing with the Skylark on them?
I don't know if they can order the masks. You can certainly get the T-shirts. But did I say that's the T-shirt?
Yes.
Yes. If you want a mask, you'd have to probably send us an email or give us a call, because I can put things on the website, but it takes me about a week of sort of bashing my head against a wall to remember how to do it each time. So we haven't put the masks on yet.
So we have a question that we ask every bookseller,
yes,
which is, please finish this sentence for us. Running a successful bookstore is part hard work, part luck, and part what else?
Hard work, luck, and hope.
Hope. That's good. We haven't had that one before.
Yes, it's an exercise in sort of optimism over common sense. But I mean, as I said before, I'm having so much fun, and this was such a wonderful decision, and I'm so glad to have done it. And I have this incredible team who I work with, and I'm so lucky to have them. And it's been such a joy from start to finish.
Wonderful. We have a winner for the swag giveaway. My producer Joe has told me it's Kathy Blake. So Kathy, please send an email to mightyblaze@gmail.com and let us know your t-shirt size and your address, and we will forward it on to Alex and get you your Skylark Bookshop t-shirt. Yay! Alex, thank you so much for being with us today. It was such a pleasure to have an opportunity to talk with you.
Well, thank you. It's been a joy. Really enjoyed it, Kimberly.
And then to our viewers, please go read this wonderful book if you haven't already. It's really, really lovely, and you will find it as elegant and evocative and engrossing as Publishers Weekly says it is. And we will, again, the links are below for skylarkbookshop.com, where you can purchase the book directly. And if you get it from the store, Alex can sign it for you. And you can also check out Alex online at alexgeorgebooks.com. Find out more about what's going on with his very busy schedule. And if you like today's show, which we hope that you did, please subscribe to A Mighty Blaze's page on Facebook, so you can get notified of our other events, or even subscribe to our newsletter, which you can do on our website, amightyblaze.com. Alex, thank you again.
Thank you, Kimberly.
To our viewers, join us back here next week for another episode of Authors Love Bookstores. Until then, be well and keep reading.
Bye.
Bye.